So you were just talking about the people that sort of you started with, and then slowly some of them stay and some of them go in terms of making films. It almost reminds me of a line, and it might have been Edith Ivy in Followed, who talks about the strong will rise and the weak will falter, and that this is a harsh look at social and economic structures, but it's similar to nature, and nature is harsh. And I thought, I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but I thought that was a great line, and I'm not sure if it was her character.
It is her character,
okay.
Yes.
So it almost reminds me of a filmmaking Darwinism, basically. And so when you say this, if we were to label some strong and some weak, and I realize that's sort of a harsh statement there, but when it comes to filmmaking, what would you term the weak and what would you term the strong?
That is a very good question, actually. I hadn't really thought about that before, but you're exactly right. It's not harsh, it's reality. There are people that are strong and there are people that are weak. The difference is, as a filmmaker, if you're trying to determine what makes a strong one and what makes a weak one, I think what it really has to do with is people that see their career as a short-term thing and a long-term thing, and that is the differentiator. When you make a project, it's not just about that project if you're thinking long-term. It's thinking about, how is this project going to enable me to make the next thing, and then the thing after that, and then the thing after that. It's about climbing that ladder, ascending the staircase, because each piece that you make, assuming that you do a good job and people like it, will enable you to do something else different in the future. But if you see your career as a short-term game, if you just see it as, oh, I have to make this project, you make that project, and then you have no idea what you're going to make next, or what kind of film you want to make next, or if you can't identify what kind of films you like to make. As I said earlier, for me, I'm drawn to films that are about loss and identity. If you're a filmmaker that can't say very succinctly what kind of projects you make, no one will take you seriously because they don't know what to hire you for. So it's very important, I think, if you want to perceive yourself as being a strong filmmaker, to not only have an identity for the kind of films you like to make, but also have a plan and a progression for which you wish to jump off.
So let's take two filmmakers, filmmaker A and B. Both of them, both works are amazing. They're incredibly creative people, talented, different things like that. But what would be the telltale signs that one is probably going to fall off in some sense and the other one's going to keep going?
I think that the telltale signs honestly have to do with your motivation. A lot of filmmaking is stamina. And if you're in the middle of production and you're already exhausted or tired of the film that you're doing, I'm always astounded when I talk to filmmakers who are in post-production on a film and they're talking about, oh, I can't wait for this to be finished. I understand editing is hard. Filmmaking is a hard, long, strenuous journey. But when you aren't engaged or involved in the process that you're actively involved with, and that can be in post-production and production and prep, or even in publicizing the film that you're making, you're not going to make it as a filmmaker, because it's about that long journey. It may take you 3 or 4 years to make a feature film, and I don't mean shoot it, I mean develop it, shoot it, edit it, publicize it, release it. It's a multi-step process, and I think that that is the indicator of if you're going to make it or not, if you can make it across each of the finish lines, not just one.
Right, and not tire easily.
And not tire easily. You've got to constantly be fighting. If you're not an advocate for your own film, no one else will be.
Right. Were there times where you were tested in that you wondered, is this really for me? And then you got back on course? Because there are a lot of things that are surprising. Everyone thinks, oh, being on set, yeah, it's going to be a long day, but it's cool and you feel, you know, whatever, important, glamorous. But then those long hours in the editing bay or problem solving, you know, things aren't working out, something's wrong with the film, like the actual physical, you know, whatever, the mechanics of the project. Were there times where you were tested and then you had to sort of like write yourself?
I think there's, unless someone has some incredible piece of luck, I think that on every film there's a moment where you question yourself. You question, can I do this? Do I have the capacity to do this thing? And what separates you from other filmmakers if you're successful is that you have the capacity to troubleshoot and get past the roadblock. It may have to do with a location. Perhaps you're filming somewhere and a location doesn't work the way that you thought it was going to work. Perhaps someone's late. Perhaps an actor's having a meltdown. That happens on film sets. I've had experience with that before. You can't stop the entire production because any of those things happen. You have to figure out a way to chart a course forward, because especially when you're working in independent film, you don't have the resources nor the time to stop because something doesn't work. And so I think for most filmmakers, if you want to identify, and even for me, you've got to be able to say, okay, here's my problem, here are some outcomes if this thing doesn't work out the way I think it does, and what path is going to be the best way for me to fix the problem. And that's what you've always got to do. So for me, it's always been, I've never had a moment where, oh, I don't want to do film, or this is not for me, but I have certainly had moments where I have questioned my capacity to do them. But what's, I think, made me successful professionally is being able to figure out what the solutions are.
I know there's a term in self-help, it's called low frustration tolerance, which I think all of us suffer from time to time. It sounds like being able to move through like these tedious things that really would get a lot of people down. Sounds like the secret to a lot of it, because a lot of people I hear that give up, it's over some incident that happened, and they say, you know what, forget it, I'm done with it.
Well, I think about my grandmother a lot, and my grandmother died a few years ago, but one of the things that she always used to say about her husband, my grandfather, is that she never went to bed angry with him. And whether or not that was true or not in their 60 years of marriage, that I don't know. While that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, I think that it certainly can be applied to your professional career and not just your personal life. And so for me, if I get frustrated or angry, as we all do on a film set, it may be with the person you're working with, it could be an actor, it could be a producer, it could be someone on your crew. If you go to bed angry with them, and if you hold on to that anger, it's very easy to lose sight of the big picture. And so for me, I think you almost have to take this Zen approach to say, shit happens, you do it, you deal with it, and then you move on from it. Because if you're constantly holding on to the bad, you can't focus on the good.